I'm Jill, and I'm here today for Eric Levy. We're campaigning for Eric Levy, who himself is a 94-year-old human rights campaigner. Anybody campaigning out in London probably has seen Eric. He's the 94-year-old that was arrested last year at the Westminster Magistrates Court at one of the Julian Assange trials. And he's been an activist all his life. He's been a human shield in Iraq. He's defended the Palestinians for years. He's been all around the world, in the Congo, everywhere, fighting the good fight and standing up against tyranny and standing up for people's rights. Eric is in hospital right now here at UCL Hospital. And basically he was brought in, he was walking, he was upright. He was only brought in because he took a fall backwards when he had a repairman in doing work at his flat, and he tried to move out of the way. And because of a recent weight loss, his trousers, pajama bottoms were baggy, and he stepped on the bottom hem of his pajama bottoms and fell over backwards. He's steady, he can walk, he's been living independently on his own for years, but he took a fall and he hit his head on the cooker. So naturally, the people at the building manager was concerned and wanted to make sure he was okay. So they called an ambulance and took Eric to hospital. He went in, and he's been here for 8 weeks. Now, this is a guy that went in, he was getting up to go to the bathroom every day in his own apartment. He was feeding himself, he was sitting at the table, he was looking at papers and maybe reading a bit out of a book occasionally. He was fine, you know, he could converse with everybody, he was of sound mind. So when they put him in here, he has just gone downhill over the past, it's 8 weeks. He was brought in May 4th. So here we are, July 1st. It's coming up for 8 weeks now.
What about the original issue that he came in for?
Well, that was hitting his head. He was a bit delirious, like he might have had a concussion the first day, because he called me up and he said he was with friends in the countryside. And I was like, I know your friends. Who exactly are you with? So I take their point. He was talking a bit silly because of the bump on his head, maybe. And then the nurse took the phone and she said, actually, he's at UCH. We've got him here just under observation for a day or two because he's hit his head and he's a bit delirious. So
how did a day become 8 weeks?
Exactly.
Well,
we went to see him every day for the first week or so, but then after that we were told there were no visitors allowed.
What's the grounds for that?
Well, one person, one of his friends, came in and was so angry with the treatment of Eric, he behaved in a way that nobody condones. And he was apparently violent or threatening with the nurses, and posted things showing the employees on social media. And then that got everybody struck off. So then they said no visitors, because I guess they couldn't decide who was this person, and they didn't know, so they just decide they're going to ban everybody because they have to protect Eric. So, okay, fair enough, it was an unfortunate incident, but they can't blame all of us for it and deprive Eric of his visitors. So that took about 10 days to sort out, and then we were told it was only going to be one person a day for 1 hour allowed back. And they booked up all the appointments so that none of us, the regular friends of Eric's who had been visiting, could come in. So they allowed this one person to block book everything and keep us all out because we asked too many questions. We asked for physiotherapy for Eric. We asked for Eric to be sitting up in the chair.
Okay, presumably this is not simply universal. Everyone's conspiring against you.
Well, the nurse in question, the man who was doing it, admitted to me that the ward nurse told him to book all of those and then give a list to his daughter, to Eric's daughter, to see who she approved and who she didn't approve. And it's a long story, but she doesn't like a lot of Eric's friends for whatever reason. So a lot of us were blocked out. And that was only lifted after I wrote a 6-page letter to the hospital complaining about our lack of access and exposing that the ward nurse had conspired to keep us all out when we were totally innocent. We hadn't done anything that warranted banning from coming to visit. So once that was sorted out, then we were okay again. And that's the past, I guess, 3 weeks we've been coming in again as regular. But there was a period of 2 weeks.
To pinpoint either individual or machine, hierarchy, whatever, that's causing this problem, what would you say it is?
The problem with the healthcare in general?
I mean, that someone can land in almost like a Kafkaesque situation.
Oh, I know. Well, here's the thing, it's the legal system, let's face it. They're all terrified of lawyers saying that if they let them get out of bed and he falls over, they are going to be liable. So what do? I've heard them. They say to anybody in that ward who tries to get out of bed, stay in bed. So they're not encouraged to get up. And as I say, I'm an exercise therapist in a rehabilitation after surgery, after pregnancy, after injury, and elderly rehabilitation to get them back to a state of walking and everything. So this is what I do for a living. So I know it's use it or lose it. If you are sitting in a bed for 8 weeks, do not be under any misconception that you're going to get up and walk again straight away. It's going to take you weeks to get back up and start walking, and you have to completely teach these people how to walk, starting them off crawling again first, so they get the right side, left side, and coordination with the hips and the shoulders, and they find the way to do that. That's not just going to happen. So because they're short of staff, some people may not know
How does that express itself, the shortage of staff?
Well, some people may not know, but on each ward, you think they're all nurses, but they're not. They're carers. These people, all they know is to come and make him comfortable, to take his temperature, take his blood pressure. But the real nurse that's on the ward is in a dark navy blue suit kind of outfit, and that's the only nurse on the ward.
So the carers, are they in any way qualified in this field, in nursing or anything like this?
Well, they obviously know how to operate the blood pressure machine, and they know how to give a pill, and they know how to take a temperature.
Right.
But if you ask them any question, anything about what's happening or can he do this, they just say you have to ask the nurse. And it's like, where's the nurse? I believe the one nurse is serving 2 wards. The ward he's in, it's like an elderly care unit, so there's a smaller number of beds. There's 4. So I think she's serving that ward and a ward of 4 next to it. So if there's only one nurse there, or even one nurse from the 4, and you've got 4 old guys trying to get up out of bed, and you've only got 2 little carers and this one nurse, and there's 4 guys, they have to get a machine to get him out of bed and jack him up, get this sling under him, and it takes them like 10 minutes to power this lift up, to lift him out of bed just to put him in the chair.
So it's a logistical problem that is resolved by basically
keeping them bed bound.
To...
So anyway, they're telling him straight away he's bed bound before he's even said he wants to stay in bed. He said he wanted to get up and walk. The physiotherapist was told to come, but they said, no, he's bedbound. He says, I want to go up to go to the bathroom. No, just do it in the pan or do it in your pad.
So convenience then.
It definitely seems to me like there is no opportunity for quality rehabilitation in the hospital, or even just keeping function. But it did strike me as absolutely shocking, like how overstretched everybody is and how little quality care there is.
So how much time will the nurses and doctors spend with Eric, or discussing with Eric, or examining Eric? Or?
Well, for example, I go in every day and bring food because it's microwaved food in there, and it's not looking
what
very
sort of food
nutritious to me. Macaroni and cheese.
Microwave.
Yeah, microwave macaroni and cheese, microwave chicken stew, microwaves chili beans and rice, and then there's always a little cup of soup, and then there's a jelly of some kind, because he's on soft foods because Eric's had his dentures done,
right.
But they're at the dentist, so he's got a chewing issue. So he's got to be on soft foods at the moment. But I mean, I've seen the other plates as well. The food is not what I would say is going to make somebody recover quickly. Right. It isn't heavy
and who's
nutrition.
Doing the catering, you know?
Well, I believe it's just brought up from the basement. Somebody's microwaving it and sending it upstairs in these big, huge trolleys. They come with, like, it looks like airline food. It comes with one of those plastic wrap things on the top, and you peel it back.
What about this most recent story they got about COVID on the ward?
Well, that's what they say, but who knows who the COVID person supposedly is. I was just in there, and they all had visitors there, and one woman walked in off the street to visit somebody in the ward next to him, and they said, oh, well, you have to book appointments now. It's only 1 hour, one person a day. And they told her that, but she obviously didn't know it, and she just came in.
Have they got windows there? What's the ventilation like?
The ventilation's terrible. There is no fresh air.
Stagnant in the air?
It is. There's no fresh air. I have to say the smells aren't bad. It's not like you can smell diapers or anything like that bad, but it just is really stale air, and you feel quite tired
given
if
the
you've
story
been there
about
for a
respiratory
while.
spread of COVID.
Oh yeah, you're supposed to have
odd,
heavy ventilation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So has Eric been in fear about what will happen to him?
No, he's not. Eric is wanting to know what's going to happen to him, but he says, you know, well, if I live 3 more years, he says, I want to live as long as possible. So he said, you know, I'm okay. I feel I can live a long time, but if they're telling me I could die in 3 days or 3 months or 3 years, who knows? So I'm going to go and do some things now when I get out, and maybe take this trip to Australia and see some people there and be part of the Assange supporters in Australia and see his daughter. And that's kind of how he's looking at it. Eric's a very practical person. He's very humble. He doesn't want it to be all about him and act and talk like he's important. So he's thinking, if it's my time to die, then I will die. But he does not want to be forced to die. Make no mistake about that. He had no idea anybody was planning end-of-life care and any kind of injections for him. The doctor told me yesterday that she thinks it's a good idea that Eric has a consultation with the palliative care doctor. And I said, why? I said, he's not going to take cocktails of drugs. I said, are you giving him midazolam now? And she said, no. I said, are you giving him any end-of-life cocktails now? Any end-of-life drugs? And she said, no.
So the ward there's been an outbreak of COVID on the ward. But they said there was an outbreak on the ward. So I went up and I asked them, why is Eric on a ward then with COVID outbreak?
Well, exactly, yeah.
And they said, oh, no, we moved the people with the COVID off, and we're just leaving them on the ward now and testing them. And I said, how are you testing them? They said, with PCR. So we're kind of left in a situation, when you walk into NHS now, they say, oh no, we have different rules. But there are no such things as rules or legislation. These are guidelines, yeah? And they're trying to force that upon people by saying, you can't this, you can't that. I think that the doctors have become complicit. Now they're desensitized to the fact that people are now just cash cows or a burden to society, and these people are dealing with it on a daily basis, and there is no compassion that I see anymore from these people. In actual fact, I just see lies and passive aggressive behavior, and that scares me. it's ordinary people that join in this whole thing, and then you're left with doctors and nurses that have care over people and power over their lives, that are just complicit in doing what they're doing. It's endemic behaviour all the way through. I've even found that even when you go in and you speak to them, they kind of brush you off with this passive aggressive that you don't know as good as us. We're doctors, we're professionals. But I can see a man when he can't lift up his hands and feed himself, and after 4 days of eating soup, he's sitting up and feeding himself and back to himself. Like, I had grandparents, that had dementia and whatever else like that. They were in my house for a very long period of time. I know what dementia is. I know when people are non-compos mentis or cannot look after themselves. Just logically, I can see Eric is not in that state. But yet doctors were saying this is the state he's in. Yeah, they were asking him yesterday, the day before I went in, and they said, like, do you know who the gentleman is? Now, they were behind the curtain. So they were just asking him, do you know who the gentleman is? But Eric can't hear very well. He can only hear in one ear. So he's going, what? Who? And I shouted out from the other thing. I said, what's my name, Eric? And he goes, oh, that's Keith. Can I say to you, inside there, right, they have these stickers up there. Infection. Don't be the one to pass it on. Every 2 minutes, someone gets infected. They have it all plastered around there, like this propaganda. So they've taken me into a room. One of the matrons on the wards taken me into a room and explained, I'm really sorry, Keith, I can see that you really care about Eric, and I know you're not next of kin, so we can't really tell you anything about his medical care, but he's very sick and we're thinking of end of life. And I said, really? And she goes, yes.
Well, all right, he's what, 94, isn't he?
Yes, of course he's
so
94.
End of life could happen at any time.
Listen, the man could die tomorrow. Right. He could die next year or 5 years later.
I know. I have to wait. I can't give you without asking you.
Why are you here today?
I'm here to support Eric Levy. He's our good friend and protester, supporter of Julian Assange, and he's being held for over nearly 2 months now in this hospital. Against his will most of the time, especially in the last 2 weeks. I visited him last Friday, and he told me in front of his doctor that he wanted to go home. And they said that on Monday, this last Monday, they were taking a decision, a joint decision, the doctor's joint decision regarding his release, and that he was so happy, just so enthusiastic, speaking to me and telling all the things he's been done and throughout his life. He always does that. He's so enthusiastic and clear, and he had dessert I brought him, and he asked for more, so he has an appetite. Oh, the doctors have no problems saying that is his decision. They told me, I am a witness. He said, we are going to take a decision, but it's a joint decision. Eric, you have to tell us where you want to go. And I said, what are the options? I asked. And the doctor said, well, he can go to sheltered accommodation where he was originally, and carers will come 4 times a day, but no night carers. Or he can choose to go to a nursing home where he would have nurses and doctors visiting, or a care home where he would have 24/7 staff around, but no nurses all the time. But this decision is his. You have to tell us, Eric, you want to do. So they are not hiding that. But in practical terms, when Monday came, the day of the big decision, they said they found a lung problem, a lung infection.
I heard that, yeah.
So they are always finding another excuse, isn't it?
also likely that in circumstances where you've got someone in hospital, but there's always a danger, particularly if they're weak, that they become even more ill in hospital?
That's our worry.
Put it on speakerphone, Jules, so they can hear him in the office by the bed. All start. Right. Eric's on the other end of his phone, so if you want to shout so he can hear you.
Free Eric Levy! Free Eric Levy!
Free Eric Levy!
We'll speak to you in a bit. No worries. Much love. Ciao, ciao. Bye. Well, there he is. He heard all that. He was taken aback by it, apparently. He was taken aback by the support out here and what's going on. Fingers crossed we'll get him released.
With an old man like that who has difficulty hearing, and sometimes he's not following everything, but other times he's totally lucid. So you can imagine the way in which some hospital doctors, thinking perhaps they're doing the right thing, but having got so used to the power they've been exercising over people without any questioning over 2 years, when they come and speak to someone who's 94 years of age, and they've already discussed what they think the care should be, the tendency will be for them to try and persuade that person to adopt the position that they think is right. Now, the position they think are right may be governed by all sorts of factors that are not individualized. They're general bureaucratic decisions that a doctor and nurses and a hospital will make about people's care. And if you like, that's the biggest problem we've got in Britain and probably internationally with care now in hospitals, is the way in which it's been turned into a bureaucratic machine serving government edicts or serving the financial interests of those who control the hospitals, because the hospitals have been de facto privatized. Now, in any circumstance where you've got a bureaucracy, the police, the prisons, the judiciary and hospitals, the army as well, when someone makes a mistake and there's 3 or 4 people around them who see that mistake happen, the most senior person will often try and cover up that mistake. There are all sorts of ways they can cover it up. They can write a report that omits something or includes something that wasn't quite true. And eventually what happens is they discuss this with the other staff and they agree that this is the line they will take about what is true. And we need to take back the hospitals under the control, or place the hospitals under democratic control and accountability. And that starts, of course, as Keith correctly pushed me to come here, it starts, of course, with individual patients. Eric is lucky that he's got a network of people who will stand up for him. Most patients who are 90 or 85 and so on, maybe they don't have people who can come down to the hospital and complain and protest about mistreatment.
The only reason why he's still there is because of the bureaucratic nature of the hospital and how all these hospitals keep old people in, often to the point where they say the only way forward is end of life care. Now, we know they were contemplating that here for Eric. But we also know that they've now said, and I think it's entirely because of his friends and us out here resisting, they're now saying they're not trying to administer end-of-life care, they're trying to let him out. But they keep finding excuses for not letting him out. The latest one being, oh, there's something in there which he might transmit or get. It's all nonsense. Eric Levy will be much better out of hospital. And what is happening to him now is an example of a new medical tyranny going across this country.
Hi there. Well, I was just with Eric upstairs visiting him, and he was sitting up in his bed, and he was very happy to see me and very happy eating his food that I brought him, some sardines, which he loves, and he had some orange juice and some soup and some nutritious food and a nutrition drink. And he sat and told me he had spoken to the doctor and that they say they are going to release him hopefully next week.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully.
So we have to.
We've been here before.
We have been here before. For 3 weeks, they were telling us he was going to be released next week. Now they say that he'll be released. They're planning for next week if all the care in the community can be arranged, and if there's no further complications that stop him from going home. So we've made the point already with the doctors, and they agree that the longer he stays in the hospital, the slower he recovers.